Welcome back to Stamps Old World US, where we explore the most fascinating treasures in philatelic history. Today, we are diving deep into the absolute holy grail of American stamp collecting, the world-famous 1918 24-cent inverted Jenny, printed to commemorate the nation's very first regular airmail service connecting Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. This iconic stamp features the Curtis J.N. for biplane, affectionately known as the Jenny. However, due to a hurried printing process to meet the airmail launch date, a single sheet of 100 stamps was accidentally run through the press upside down, causing the central blue biplane to fly upside down within its red border. That small printing mistake instantly birthed the most celebrated rarity in United States postal history. The story behind this single error sheet is pure legend. On May 14, 1918, a bank clerk named William T. Roby walked into a Washington, D.C. post office during his lunch break and purchased the entire sheet of 100 invert stamps for just $24. Recognizing the immense error, post office inspectors tried desperately to track Roby down and buy the sheet back, but he held firm and ended up selling the sheet shortly after to a collector for $15,000. The sheet was eventually broken down into blocks and individual singles, each tracked meticulously by collectors and auction houses across the world for over a century. So, what is the market value of the inverted Jenny in today's dollar? While average grade or hinged copies of the inverted Jenny regularly fetch anywhere from $400,000 to over $800,000 at auction, top-tier examples smash records. In fact, position number 49 from the original sheet graded an incredible Gem 95 mint never hinged shattered all historical records when it sold at Robert A. Siegel auction galleries for a mind-blowing $2,006,000. This monumental sale officially marked the highest price ever paid for a single United States postage stamp. The incredible multi-million-dollar market value of the inverted Jenny comes down to three main factors: extreme scarcity with only 100 copies ever produced, unmistakable visual appeal, and legendary historical status within American pop culture. Whether you are a lifelong philatelist or just starting your collection, the inverted Jenny remains the ultimate symbol of stamp collecting success. Next up, the 1902 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp, cataloged as Scott No. 300, which served as the workhorse for postcards and lightweight mail during the early 20th century. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing as part of the series of 1902, this issue replaced the 1894 design and features an intricate portrait of Benjamin Franklin flanked by ornate ornamental columns. While millions of these stamps were produced, understanding their condition, centering, and specific variety is essential to determining what yours might be worth in today's market. For standard used copies that show heavy postal cancellations or minor handling wear, current market value generally sits under $1, making them very affordable for beginner collectors. Unused or mint-hinged copies with clear margins typically range between $5 and $15. However, premium mint never-hinged examples with exceptional centering and high numerical grades can fetch between $50 and several $100s at specialty stamp auctions, particularly when accompanied by official certificates of authenticity. Additionally, philatelists actively seek out rare varieties associated with this issue, including the imperforate edition known as Scott No. 314. As well as scarce booklet pane configurations and early coil roll versions like Scott 318. These rare production varieties, along with unrecorded color shades or intact plate number strips, can drive market values into the thousands of dollars. Whether you are holding a common piece of postal history or a high-grade investment piece, the series of 1902 Franklin stamp remains a fundamental icon of U.S. philately. Next up, the 1951 3-cent Battle of Brooklyn commemorative stamp, cataloged as Scott No. 1003, issued on December 10, 1951, to mark the 175th anniversary of the Revolutionary War battle. This violet-colored issue features a striking engraving of General George Washington on horseback directing his troops near the Fulton Ferry House as they prepare to cross the East River, entitled "Washington Saves His Army at Brooklyn." The artwork commemorates one of the most tactical evacuations in American military history when it comes to current market value in today's dollar. This stamp was produced in a large printing of over 116 million copies by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, making it very accessible for collectors. Standard postally used copies or common mint single stamps typically sell for around 30 to 50 cents each on the secondary market. Unused full original gum singles are very affordable, while a classic first-day cover postmarked in Brooklyn, New York, usually trades between $1 and $3 for collectors looking at larger formats. A mint never-hinged block of 4 typically sells for $2 to $3, and a full preserved mint sheet of 50 stamps generally ranges between $10 and $20 depending on overall gum condition and centering. Premium graded single copies rated in superb condition can occasionally reach up to $35 among specialized registry collectors. Overall, while Scott 1003 is not a high-value rarity, it remains an affordable, beloved classic that captures a pivotal moment of the American Revolution. Next up, the iconic 1960 to 5-cent George Washington stamp. Cataloged in the Scott system as Scott number 1213, issued on November 23, 1962. In New York City, this staple piece of American post-war philately features a detailed portrait bust of George Washington, designed from a classic marble sculpture by Jean-Antoine Houdon, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in a distinctive dark blue-gray shade. This 5-cent issue was released to cover the increased first-class letter rate that went into effect in early 1963, when looking at market value in today's dollar. This stamp was produced in vast quantities, reaching billions of copies to serve ordinary household mailers across the country. Because of its massive production run, a standard postally used copy or common single mint stamp is extremely affordable, generally selling for around 35 to 50 cents on the retail secondary market. For collectors seeking clean specimens, a pristine mint never-hinged single usually trades between 50 cents and $1.50. For collectors interested in multiples or specialty formats, a mint plate block of 4 typically sells for around $1.50 to $2.50, while a first-day cover postmarked on November 23, 1962, commands between $1.50 and $3 depending on the cachet manufacturer. Full sheets of 100 stamps generally fetch between $20 and $35 based on centering and paper condition. However, specialized varieties like the 1213, a booklet pane of 5 with the explanatory label, carry a slight premium, often trading between $3 and $6. While Scott 1213 is not a high-ticket rarity, it remains an essential piece of mid-20th century American postal history. Next up, the 1966 cent Frank Lloyd Wright stamp. Cataloged in the Scott system as Scott number 1280, released on June 8, 1966 on the architect's birthday in Spring Green, Wisconsin. This issue was part of the celebrated Prominent American series, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in a striking dark blue-gray ink. The design features a portrait of Frank Lloyd Wright alongside one of his most recognized architectural masterpieces in the background, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City. When analyzing the current market value in today's dollar, this stamp was printed in large quantities to serve as low-denomination fractional postage, making standard examples extremely accessible to collectors. Postally used copies and common unused mint single stamps generally trade for around 35 to 50 cents on the retail market. A clean, mint never-hinged single with nice centering typically commands around 50 cents to $1 for collectors seeking specialized pieces or larger multiples. A mint plate block of 4 usually sells for around $1 to $2.50. A first-day cover postmarked on June 8, 1966, from Spring Green, Wisconsin, trades between $1.50 and $3. Full original sheets of 100 stamps generally fetch between $15 and $25, while vertical booklet panes featuring this stamp also carry a modest value of around $2 to $5. While Scott 1280 is an affordable collectible rather than a high-priced rarity, it remains a fantastic piece of mid-century philatelic and architectural heritage. Next up, the 3-cent deep violet George Washington stamp from the famous Washington Franklin issues. Cataloged extensively under various Scott numbers such as Scott 333, 403, and most commonly Scott 501. Issued between 1908 and 1917 by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. This series replaced earlier ornate frame designs with a standardized profile portrait of George Washington enclosed in a simple oval frame flanked by laurel leaves, designed to pay the international letter rate or domestic heavy mail rates during the World War I era. This iconic series remains one of the most studied stamp designs in American history when evaluating current market value in today's dollar. Standard postally used copies of Scott 501 are plentiful, making them very affordable for beginner collectors at around 50 cents to $1.50 on the secondary market. Unused or mint-hinged examples in average condition typically sell for $3 to $10. However, clean mint never-hinged singles with strong centering, rich deep violet color, and fresh original gum command higher values, often ranging between $15 and $50, because the Washington Franklin series features dozens of complex design types, paper watermarks, and perforation differences. Certain rare production varieties command substantial premiums. For instance, specific early coil configurations or scarce perforation varieties from this series, such as Scott 445 or 489 coil pairs, can fetch hundreds to thousands of dollars when certified by expertising services. For collectors holding standard multiples of Scott 501, a mint plate block of 4 generally trades between $10 and $25, while complete preserved mint sheets sell between $75 and $150 depending on overall condition. Whether you hold a standard piece of wartime postal history or a rare perforation variety, the 3-cent Washington Franklin stamp is a bedrock piece of U.S. philately. Next up, the 4-cent brown George Washington stamp from the world-famous Washington Franklin series, issued extensively between 1908 and 1917 by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. This essential brown definitive stamp spans several catalog variations, including Scott numbers 334, 404, 427, 465, and 503, designed with the clean side profile portrait of George Washington framed by a delicate laurel wreath. This 4-cent denomination was originally produced to fulfill double-weight first-class domestic letter postage and combined parcel rates during the early 20th century when evaluating current market value in today's dollar. Standard postally used copies of common variations like Scott 503 are very affordable and typically sell for 50 cents to $2 on the retail collector market. Basic unused or mint-hinged copies in average condition generally range between $10 and $25. However, high-grade mint never-hinged singles featuring rich brown ink, crisp perforations, and superb centering can easily command between $35 and $75 among registry collectors because the Washington Franklin issues were produced using different paper types, watermarks, and printing methods. Certain scarce production varieties command massive premiums. For example, early single-line or double-line watermarked varieties like Scott 360, printed on experimental bluish paper, can fetch several $1,000s at specialized auctions when backed by expert certificates. Standard mint plate blocks of 4 for common issues generally trade between $20 and $50, while intact mint sheets range between $100 and $250 depending on overall gum preservation. Whether you hold a common piece of classic mail history or a rare paper variety, this 4-cent Washington issue remains a beloved cornerstone of U.S. stamp collecting. Next up, the 1847 10-cent black George Washington, cataloged as Scott No. 2, issued on July 1, 1847, by the United States Post Office Department. This iconic piece, along with the 5-cent Benjamin Franklin, represents the very first general issue postage stamps in American history. Engraved and printed by Rawdon, Wright, Hatch, and Edson, the stamp features a striking black engraving of George Washington adapted from the famous portrait by Gilbert Stuart, designed to cover the cost of mailing a single letter traveling over 300 miles. Scott No. 2 was issued as an imperforate stamp on thin bluish paper when assessing market value in today's dollar. Scott No. 2 stands as a multi-$1,000 rarity due to its immense historical importance and limited total print run of under 870,000 copies. Standard postally used copies with 4 clear margins typically sell anywhere between $500 and $1,500 depending on cancellation clarity and overall paper freshness. Unused or mint examples with original gum are exceptionally scarce and routinely fetch $35,000 to over $60,000 at major philatelic auctions. Furthermore, specialty formats and postal history covers drive astronomical market prices. For instance, Scott No. 2 on an intact original envelope postmarked in 1847 routinely commands thousands of dollars, while extremely rare bisected uses, where a postmaster physically cut the stamp in half to pay a 5-cent rate, can fetch upwards of $15,000 to $30,000. Superb graded singles with exceptional margins and light cancels have even reached well over $100,000 in top-tier auction settings. Whether in used or mint condition, the 1847 10-cent Washington is a true cornerstone of world philately. Next up, the 1949 25-cent Universal Postal Union airmail stamp, catalogued as Scott number C44, issued on November 30, 1949, in Seattle, Washington. This Rose Carmine stamp was the third and highest denomination release in a 3-stamp series, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Postal Union, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, using the rotary press method. The striking graphic depicts a Boeing Stratocruiser commercial airliner soaring above a terrestrial globe, highlighting the incredible evolution of international airmail transit when looking at current market value in today's dollar. Scott number C44 had a sizable total printing of over 16 million copies, making it very accessible for collectors. Postally used copies in standard condition typically retail between 80 cents and $1.50. Clean, mint-hinged copies usually sell for around $1, while fresh mint never-hinged singles trade between $1.50 and $3 on average for collectors targeting multiples and full formats. A mint plate block of 4 generally sells for around $3 to $7. First day covers postmarked on November 30, 1949, from Seattle, Washington, command between $2 and $5 depending on the cachet design. A complete preserved mint sheet of 50 stamps generally ranges between $35 and $75 based on centering and gum condition. High-grade, gem-certified individual copies with superb centering can occasionally command premiums up to $35 among registry set builders. While Scott C44 is not a million-dollar rarity, it remains a beloved, affordable centerpiece of mid-century American airmail history. Next up, the 1912 5-cent parcel post mail train stamp, catalogued as Scott number Q5, issued by the Post Office Department on January 1, 1913, as part of a dedicated 12-stamp series to inaugurate the National Parcel Post Service. This issue features a beautifully detailed red-brown engraving of a steam locomotive speeding along the tracks pulling postal cars, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. The Parcel Post series was designed specifically to pay fees for transporting heavy packages and parcel mail across the nation, showcasing American transportation power and modern logistics when evaluating current market value in today's dollar. Scott number Q5 remains a popular mid-tier classic that offers great value for historical collectors. Standard postally used copies with light cancellation marks typically sell for around $3 to $8 on the secondary market. Unused or mint-hinged copies in sound condition generally range between $15 and $35. However, fresh mint never-hinged single copies featuring vibrant red-brown ink, intact original gum, and crisp perforation borders command higher valuations, typically trading between $50 and $120 depending on precise centering for collectors interested in specialized multiples or high-grade investments. A mint plate block of 4 usually ranges between $150 and $300 depending on overall condition. Full intact sheets or rare commercial covers postmarked during the brief period when parcel post stamps were strictly required are highly collectible and can fetch several $100s at specialized auctions. Exceptional gem-certified copies rated grade 95 or higher have even reached over $500 among registry set builders. Whether in used or mint condition, the 5-cent mail train stamp stands as an essential centerpiece of early 20th century American industrial and postal history. If you enjoyed this market breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe to Stamps Old World US, and leave a comment below telling us which stamp we should feature next. Welcome back to Stamps Old World US, your dedicated home for American philatelic treasures, rare postal histories, and market valuations. Today, we are taking an in-depth look at one of the most iconic commemorative issues from the early 20th century, the 1907 5-cent Pocahontas stamp, designated as Scott Catalog number 330, issued on May 3, 1907, as part of the 3-stamp Jamestown Exposition series. This issue holds significant historical value as it was the very first United States postage stamp to feature an American Indian woman. The design showcases a portrait of Pocahontas dressed in English attire, surrounded by decorative scrollwork, her birth and death years of 1595 to 1617, and bold numeric shield callouts in vibrant blue ink. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing produced roughly under 8 million copies of this specific issue on flat plates with double-line USPS watermarks and gauge 12 perforations, because it met the 5-cent Universal Postal Union International Mail rate. Many of these stamps saw heavy commercial usage across the globe. Understanding the current financial market value of Scott 330 requires evaluating its physical condition, centering, and gum quality. A standard used copy with a typical postal cancellation generally fetches between $2 and $5 for space filler examples. However, a clean, used specimen with very fine centering and light cancellation commands a higher average market value between $20 and $30 on standard retail platforms for collectors targeting unused or mint condition examples. The price scale shifts dramatically based on original gum preservation. An unused stamp that features original gum with hinge marks or minor flaws typically retails around $50 to $100. High-grade mint, never hinged specimens in very fine condition average anywhere from $250 to nearly $400 in today's active collector marketplace. Exceptional copies featuring pristine centering and C certifications can push auction realizations even higher into premium territory, whether you hold a used piece on cover or a pristine mint sheet position block. Scott 330 remains a cornerstone of early American commemorative collecting. Make sure to examine the perforation teeth and back gum under proper lighting before placing a value on your copy. Next up, the 1950 to 3-cent Betsy Ross bicentennial stamp, recognized in the philatelic community as Scott Catalog number 1004, issued on January 2, 1952. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, this commemorative stamp was released to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the birth of Betsy Ross, the historical figure famously associated with crafting the first official American flag, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing using the rotary press process. This stamp was produced in a striking carmine rose color with gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. The vignette is based on the famous painting by Charles H. Weisgerber, depicting Betsy Ross presenting the newly completed Stars and Stripes flag to the Continental Congress Committee, which included General George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross. Over 116 million copies were issued to meet national demand, making it a staple piece in standard mid-century U.S. collections. When looking at the financial evaluation of Scott 1004 in today's active stamp market, its wide availability keeps standard copies very accessible for collectors. A single used example with a typical postal cancellation carries a modest secondary market value of around 20 to 50 cents. For collectors seeking individual unused or mint condition stamps with original gum, typical market prices range between 50 cents to $1 for standard grades. However, the valuation changes depending on the specific format and grading certifications. Mint plate blocks of 4 generally sell between $2 and $3.50, while complete mint sheets of 50 stamps typically retail around $20 to $25 in the retail market. High-grade certified specimens, such as those evaluated as Superb 98 or Gem condition by professional grading services, command the highest premium, often reaching $30 to $40 at auction due to superior margins and perfect centering, whether you collect full mint sheets or single postmarked examples. The 1950 to Betsy Ross issue remains an impressive representation of American history and patriotic philately. Be sure to check your copies for crisp perforations and centered borders to assess their exact value. Next up, the 1966 to cent Frank Lloyd Wright stamp, cataloged in the philatelic community as Scott number 1280, released on June 8, 1966, in Spring Green, Wisconsin. This issue honors one of the most influenced defining figures in modern architecture on what would have been his 99th birthday, designed by the staff of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. The stamp features a portrait of Wright in front of an architectural background depicting the iconic spiral structure of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on the rotary press in a distinct blue-gray ink, it carries gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. Because 2 cents was a common rate for non-first-class bulk mail and extra postcard postage during the mid to late 1960s. Millions of these stamps were produced and circulated nationwide. When analyzing the modern dollar value of Scott 1280 in today's secondary market, Its massive press run makes standard copies readily available for collectors. An individual used example with a standard postal cancel holds a nominal secondary value of roughly 10 to 25 cents. Unused or mint single copies with original gum are similarly accessible, generally selling for around 50 cents to $1 among philatelic dealers. Value increases slightly when collecting this issue in larger configurations or special formats. A mint plate block of 4 typically sells for around $1 to $2, while a complete mint sheet of 100 stamps generally commands between $4 and $8 depending on paper freshness. Furthermore, for specialized collectors looking for high-grade certified specimens, examples graded Superb 98 or gem conditioned by professional authentication services can realize between $15 and $25 at auction due to exceptionally balanced margins and flawless centering. Whether you are collecting the full prominent American's definitive set or focusing on famous figures in American culture, the 2-cent Frank Lloyd Wright issue remains a fascinating piece of mid-century design history. Check your copies for clean perforations and well-centered borders to properly classify your examples. Next up, we are focusing on a scenic statehood commemorative, the 1951 3-cent Colorado statehood stamp, cataloged across the collector community as Scott number 1001, issued on August 1, 1951. In Minturn, Colorado, this release celebrated the 75th anniversary of Colorado joining the Union as the 38th state in 1876, printed in a distinctive blue-violet shade by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on rotary presses. The stamp measures gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. The central artwork features the imposing Denver State Capitol building, flanked by the state flower, the Columbian, on the lower left, along with a Bronco Buster cowboy on the right. In the upper background, you can spot the famous Mount of the Holy Cross and the official seal of the state of Colorado, with over 114 million copies printed. It served as standard letter postage during the early 1950s, when reviewing the dollar value of Scott 1001 in today's active stamp market. Its large total production makes average copies readily accessible for modern collections. A single postmarked used copy generally retains a nominal secondary value of 30 to 50 cents. Unused or mint single examples with original gum typically average 40 cents to $1 among philatelic dealers. For collectors seeking larger formats or certified pieces, market prices adjust slightly upward. A mint plate block of 4 usually sells for around $2 to $3. While a complete mint sheet of 50 stamps generally commands between $15 and $20 on retail sites like eBay. High-grade certified specimens, such as those evaluated in Superb 98 condition with perfect margins, represent the peak value for this issue and can sell for $50 to $60 at auction. Whether you collect statehood commemoratives or love Western American imagery, Scott 1001 is a vibrant representation of Colorado history. Check your copies for clean perforation teeth and centered margins to evaluate their condition. Next up, we are taking a close look at a milestones issue, the 1951 3-cent landing of Cadillac at Detroit stamp, recognized across the philatelic community as Scott Catalog number 1000, released on July 24, 1951, in Detroit, Michigan. This commemorative issue was produced to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the landing of French explorer Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac and the founding of Detroit in 1701, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on rotary presses. The stamp was produced in a bright blue ink with gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. The artwork cleverly merges history with modernity, showcasing Cadillac and his French landing party stepping ashore from their canoes in 1701, contrasted against the towering 1951 Detroit city skyline in the background. A total of over 114 million copies were issued to cover standard first-class domestic letter rates of the period when evaluating the market dollar value of Scott 1000. In today's secondary collector market, its large total print run keeps basic copies within easy reach for any collector. A single used example with a standard postal cancellation typically carries a nominal value of around 30 to 35 cents. Unused or mint single copies with intact original gum sell for approximately 40 to 50 cents from standard philatelic dealers for collectors aiming for complete multiples or graded pieces. Secondary market prices scale up slightly. A mint plate block of 4 generally trades for around $2, while a full mint sheet of 50 stamps typically retails between $15 and $18.50 on the secondary market. Certified high-grade examples present the ultimate premium, with a mint never hinged copy graded Superb 98 reaching up to $45 at auction due to exceptional paper freshness and flawless centering, whether you collect historical milestone anniversaries or classic Michigan postal history. Scott 1000 stands as an impressive design that bridges America's colonial past with its 20th century industrial era. Be sure to examine your copies for crisp perforation teeth and centered margins to establish accurate grading. Next up, we are examining one of the absolute gems of early 20th century American Philately, the 1901 10-cent Fast Ocean navigation stamp from the legendary Pan American Exposition series, designated as Scott Catalog number 299. Issued on May 1, 1901, in Buffalo, New York, this high-denomination issue was designed to celebrate modern American industrial achievement and maritime engineering. The stamp features a striking two-color design with a deep red-brown ornate frame enclosing a black central vignette that depicts the steamship Steady Paul, an ocean liner famed for her speed and transatlantic service. Produced by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on flat plates with double-line USPS watermarks and gauge 12 perforations, this issue was subject to strict quality controls, because the 10-cent denomination primary served heavier international mail rates and special registry services. Its total press run of roughly 5 million copies was significantly lower than the lower value stamps in the set when looking at current market values for Scott 299 in today's active collector marketplace. This stamp commands strong price stability due to its high demand among classic U.S. collectors. A standard used copy with a typical postal cancel generally sells between $25 and $40 for average centering. However, a postmarked example in fine to very fine condition with light cancellation easily reaches $50 to $75 for unused or mint copies. Prices scale up quickly depending on condition and gum quality. An unused stamp with original gum that has been previously hinged typically carries a market value between $100 and $130. Pristine mint never hinged examples in very fine condition average between $250 and $350. Furthermore, rare certified high-grade specimens, rated VFX 85 or Superb 95, regularly push into the $500 to $800 price range at major philatelic auctions. Whether you collect maritime transportation themes or are building a complete 1901 Pan American set, Scott 299 stands out as one of the most magnificent bicolor engravings ever produced by the United States. Always check for crisp frame alignment, original gum state, and perforation soundness when assessing its value. Next up, we are focusing on a remarkable scientific commemorative issue, the 1951 3-cent American Chemical Society stamp, cataloged across the philatelic community as Scott number 1002. Issued on September 4, 1951. In New York City, this release celebrated the Diamond Jubilee anniversary, marking 75 years since the founding of the American Chemical Society in 1876, printed in a rich violet-brown shade by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on rotary presses. The stamp measures gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. The intricate central artwork features the official diamond emblem of the American Chemical Society, flanked by early laboratory distillation equipment on the left and a modern industrial chemical refinery processing plant on the right. With a total press run of over 117 million copies, it served as standard first-class letter postage throughout the country in the early 1950s when analyzing the modern dollar value of Scott 1002 in today's secondary collector market. Its large total production keeps individual copies very affordable for philatelists. A single used example with a standard postmark carries a nominal market value of 25 to 35 cents. Unused or mint single copies with original gum are similarly accessible, generally selling for around 40 cents to $1 among dealer inventories for collectors interested in larger multiple formats or graded copies. The secondary valuation scales up depending on condition. A mint plate block of 4 typically sells for $2, while a complete mint sheet of 50 stamps generally commands between $8 and $15 on retail platforms. Certified high-grade specimens represent the top end of the market, with a mint never-hinged copy evaluated in superb 98 condition reaching around $35 at auction due to flawless margins and centering, whether you collect science-themed stamps or mid-century. American Commemoratives, Scott 1002 stands as a detailed tribute to scientific innovation and chemical research. Check your copies for clean perforations and well-centered borders to establish accurate grading. Next up, we are turning our attention to a classic 19th century classic from the famous banknote era, the 1881 1-cent Benjamin Franklin Ray engraved issue, recognized throughout the philatelic community as Scott Catalog Number 206, issued in late 1881 by the American Banknote Company. This stamp was produced as a Ray engraved modification of earlier banknote designs to refresh worn plates and optimize print quality, printed on soft porous paper in a distinctive gray-blue shade with gauge 12 perforations. Scott 206 features a profile bust of Benjamin Franklin enclosed within a delicate oval engine-turned frame. To re-engrave this issue, the American Banknote Company deepened the lines around Franklin's profile, making the background shading stronger and the frame details crisper compared to its predecessor, Scott 182. Over 2 billion copies were produced, primarily serving to pay the rate on circulars, drop letters, and unsealed third-class mail across the nation during the 1880s when evaluating the market dollar value of Scott 206 in today's active collector marketplace. Condition and centering play massive roles in determining price. Because billions were printed and heavily used, standard used examples with typical heavy cancellations or average centering are very common, generally valued between 50 cents and $2. However, a postmarked used copy featuring very fine centering and a light cancel moves up in value, usually selling for $5 to $10 for unused or mint condition specimens. The valuation rises noticeably depending on gum condition and centering. An unused example with original gum that has been previously hinged typically trades between $25 and $60 for fine grades. Pristine mint never hinged copies in very fine condition carry significantly higher premiums, averaging between $150 and $225. Exceptional certified high-grade specimens rated superb 95 or higher can easily command several $100s at major auctions due to the rarity of perfect centering on 19th century banknote issues. Whether you specialize in banknote varieties or are building a comprehensive classic United States collection, Scott 206 remains an essential piece of 19th century American postal heritage. Be sure to check your copies carefully for paper softness, ray engraved lines, and border margins to accurately grade your stamp. Next up, the for St. George Washington stamp from the Washington Franklin series, cataloged in the philatelic community as Scott number 427, released in September 1914 by the United States Post Office Department. This issue represents an important transition period when the Bureau of Engraving and Printing adopted new perforation standards to enhance stamp durability, printed in a distinct brown shade on flat plate presses with single-line USPS watermarks. Scott 427 features gauge 10 perforations. The vignette displays a sharp profile bust of George Washington modeled after the famous 1785 marble statue by French sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdin, framed by a classic laurel wreath with numerical for cent callouts at the bottom corners. Issued to handle double-weight first-class letters, registry supplements, and parcel mail. Over 300 million copies of this specific flat plate issue were produced during its working life when evaluating the market dollar value of Scott 427 in today's active collector market. Condition, gum status, and centering play major roles in determining value. A standard used copy with a typical postal cancellation generally holds a modest secondary market value between 60 cents and $1.50 for average centering. However, a postmarked specimen featuring very fine centering and a light, clean cancel commands a higher average value around $5 to $15 for collectors seeking unused or mint condition single stamps. Prices scale up depending on gum preservation. An unused copy with original gum that has been previously hinged typically carries a market value between $15 and $30. Pristine mint never hinged specimens in very fine condition average anywhere from $35 to $60 in today's active philatelic marketplace. Furthermore, rare certified high-grade specimens rated superb 95 or higher can easily reach over $100 at specialized auctions due to how difficult it is to find. Perfectly balanced margins on early gauge 10 flat plate. Issues: whether you collect the massive Washington Franklin Definitive Series or focus on early 20th century U.S. postal history, Scott 427 stands out as an essential workhorse issue. Be sure to check your copies carefully with a perforation gauge and watermark tray to confirm the single-line watermark and gauge 10 size before determining your stamp's grade. Next up, we are focusing on a fascinating mid-century engineering issue, the 1950 to 3-cent Centennial of Engineering stamp, cataloged in the philatelic community as Scott number 1012, issued on September 6, 1952, in Chicago, Illinois. This commemorative release celebrated the 100th anniversary of the founding of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Established back in 1852, printed in a distinct bright violet blue shade by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on rotary presses. The stamp measures gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. The artwork visually contrasts a century of civil engineering progress by depicting a traditional 1852 wooden-covered bridge with a horse-drawn wagon on the lower left, juxtaposed against the modern suspension spans of the George Washington Bridge in New York City on the right. Over 113 million copies were issued to meet nationwide demand for first-class domestic letter postage during the 1950s. When reviewing the market dollar value of Scott 1012 in today's active collector marketplace, its abundant supply keeps individual copies accessible for all collectors. A single used example with a standard postal cancellation carries a nominal secondary value of roughly 25 to 35 cents. Unused or mint single copies featuring original gum are similarly affordable, generally selling between 40 cents and $1 on average for collectors aiming for larger formats or certified pieces. Secondary market valuations increase moderately. A mint plate block of 4 typically sells for around $1.50 to $2.50, while a complete mint sheet of 50 stamps commands between $12 and $18 on retail platforms. Certified high-grade specimens represent the top tier, with a mint never-hinged copy evaluated in superb 98 condition, reaching between $30 and $45 at auction due to exceptional paper freshness and perfect centering. Whether you collect bridge-themed, topical stamps, or classic mid-century U.S. commemoratives, Scott 1012 stands as a fantastic homage to American infrastructure and civil design. Check your copies for sharp perforations and balanced borders to accurately evaluate their condition. Thank you for tuning into Stamps Old World Us, and remember to like and subscribe for more regular stamp overviews and current market price breakdowns. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Stamps Old World Us, the channel where we explore the fascinating world of classic United States stamps, their history, rarity, and current market values. If you enjoy learning about rare stamps and discovering what they could be worth in today's market, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another exciting episode. Today's featured stamp is one of the most recognizable classic American stamps ever issued, the beautiful 1-cent George Washington green stamp. At first glance, it may seem like an ordinary 1-cent stamp, but many collectors know that certain varieties of this stamp have become highly collectible and can sell for surprisingly high prices. Some examples are worth only a few dollars, while rare versions can bring hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on their condition and unique characteristics. The portrait on this stamp features George Washington, the first president of the United States. His image has appeared on numerous American stamps throughout history because he symbolizes the nation's founding and its postal heritage. This elegant green design became one of the most familiar sights on letters mailed across America during the early 20th century. The stamp shown here belongs to one of the Washington Definitive series, which was printed in enormous quantities. Millions of these stamps were used for everyday mail, making common examples relatively easy to find today. However, collecting these stamps is far from simple because there are many different printings, perforation measurements, paper varieties, watermark types, and shades of green. These small differences can dramatically affect the value of a stamp. Many beginning collectors assume that every old stamp is automatically valuable. In reality, rarity depends on several important factors. The first factor is condition. A stamp with bright original color, perfect centering, intact perforations, and no tears, creases, stains, or missing corners will always command a higher price than a damaged example. Professional grading services can significantly increase buyer confidence, especially for high-grade specimens. Another important factor is whether the stamp is mint or used. A mint stamp with original gum that has never been hinged generally sells for more than a used example. Used stamps, however, can still be valuable if they have a light, attractive cancellation and exceptional centering. Collectors often pay premium prices for beautifully preserved used copies. One of the most exciting aspects of collecting Washington stamps is identifying the exact Scott catalog number. While many stamps look almost identical, small differences in perforation gauge or watermark can separate a common stamp worth only a few dollars from a scarcer variety worth hundreds or even thousands. This is why experienced collectors always use a perforation gauge and watermark detector before identifying a stamp. Let's talk about today's market value. A typical used 1-cent George Washington green stamp in average condition usually sells for around $0 to $5. A well-centered used example with excellent eye appeal may sell for $10 to $30. Mint examples with original gum often range between $20 and $100. Depending on the specific variety and condition, higher-grade certified examples become much more valuable. Professionally graded stamps with exceptional centering can easily sell for $200 to $1,000. Scarce varieties. Unusual perforations or rare printings have been known to realize $2,000 to over $10,000 at major stamp auctions. The rarest identified varieties and error stamps from the Washington series have achieved prices reaching tens of thousands of dollars, making them some of the most sought-after classic United States stamps. Collectors should remember that market prices change over time depending on demand, rarity, auction results, and overall condition. Two stamps that appear nearly identical can have vastly different values simply because one belongs to a scarcer printing or has superior centering. That is why proper identification is essential before assigning a value. If you discover one of these stamps in an old family collection, avoid cleaning it or attempting to improve its appearance. Cleaning can permanently reduce its value. Instead, store it safely in a stamp stockbook or protective mount and consider having unusual examples examined by a professional philatelic expert. Expert certification can reveal hidden varieties that many collectors overlook. One reason collectors continue to love the George Washington series is its incredible variety. There are different shades of green, multiple printing methods, coil stamps, booklet stamps, and numerous perforation combinations. Learning to distinguish these varieties turns an ordinary-looking stamp into an exciting treasure hunt. Another feature collectors appreciate is the historical significance. These stamps carried countless personal letters, business correspondence, postcards, and official documents across the United States during a period of tremendous national growth. Every surviving stamp represents a small piece of American postal history that has traveled through time to reach today's collectors. Auction records continue to demonstrate strong demand for premium quality Washington stamps. Serious collectors compete for well-centered examples because truly outstanding copies are much harder to find than many people realize. As the supply of high-grade stamps becomes smaller, exceptional examples often continue to appreciate in value, whether you are a beginner or an experienced philatelist. The 1-cent George Washington stamp remains an essential addition to any United States stamp collection. Its rich history, numerous collectible varieties, and strong collector interest make it one of the most fascinating classic stamps ever produced. Next up, the iconic 1-cent Benjamin Franklin blue stamp, one of the most famous and widely collected stamps in United States postal history. Although millions of these stamps were printed and used for everyday mail, certain varieties have become highly collectible, with some examples selling for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on their rarity, condition, and printing type. Benjamin Franklin was one of America's founding fathers, an inventor, scientist, diplomat, writer, and the nation's very first postmaster general. Because of his enormous contribution to the American postal system, his portrait has appeared on many U.S. stamps over the years. This beautiful blue 1-cent stamp is one of the most recognizable Franklin issues ever produced and remains a favorite among collectors worldwide. At first glance, this stamp may seem ordinary because similar designs were printed in very large quantities during the early 20th century. However, experienced philatelists know that identifying the exact variety is the key to determining its true value. Small differences in perforations, paper, watermark, printing method, and color shade can transform what appears to be a common stamp into a valuable collectible. One of the first things collectors examine is the stamp's condition. Condition is one of the biggest factors affecting market value. A stamp with bright color, sharp impressions, perfectly balanced margins, and undamaged perforations will always attract stronger interest from buyers. Even tiny faults such as short perforations, creases, stains, or thin spots can reduce the value significantly. Collectors also distinguish between mint and used examples. A mint stamp with original gum that has never been hinged generally commands higher prices than a used copy. However, beautifully canceled used examples with exceptional centering remain highly desirable and are often collected by specialists building complete Franklin collections. Another important factor is centering. Many early U.S. stamps were not perfectly centered during production. Collectors pay premium prices for stamps with equal white margins on all four sides. Professional grading services often award high numerical grades to exceptionally centered examples, and these certified stamps can sell for many times more than average copies. Now let's discuss today's market value. A common used 1-cent Benjamin Franklin blue stamp typically sells for around $0.25 to $5 depending on its condition and exact variety. A well-preserved used example with attractive centering may bring $10 to $40. Mint examples with original gum frequently sell between $25 and $150. Especially if they are fresh and well-centered. Certified high-grade copies are considerably more valuable, depending on the specific Scott catalog number and grade. Professionally certified examples can sell for $300 to $2,000. Scarcer varieties featuring unusual perforations, rare watermarks, or limited printings have realized $5,000 to more than $20,000 at major philatelic auctions. The rarest Franklin stamp varieties and production errors are among the most valuable classic United States stamps ever offered for sale. Collectors should remember that not every old Franklin stamp is rare. Proper identification is essential because several nearly identical designs exist. Two stamps that look exactly alike to the untrained eye may differ greatly in value simply because of a different perforation gauge or watermark. This is why experienced collectors always consult specialized stamp catalogs and use proper measuring tools before assigning a value. If you inherit an old stamp collection and discover one of these Franklin stamps, avoid cleaning or repairing it. Cleaning may permanently damage the paper or remove valuable original characteristics. Instead, preserve the stamp in a protective mount or stockbook, and if you suspect it may be a scarce variety, consider submitting it for expert certification. Professional authentication can confirm whether the stamp is an ordinary issue or a rare collectible worth substantially more. The Benjamin Franklin series remains one of the most enjoyable areas of United States philately because it offers something for every collector. Beginners can build affordable collections, while advanced specialists search for elusive shades, rare perforation varieties, plate flaws, and production errors that are difficult to find. This combination of accessibility and rarity keeps demand strong year after year. Beyond its monetary value, this stamp represents an important chapter in American history. Every surviving example carried letters, postcards, invoices, legal documents, and personal messages across the country during a period of remarkable economic growth. Holding one of these stamps is like holding a small piece of America's communication history. Major stamp auctions continue to show strong collector interest in premium quality Franklin stamps. As more collectors compete for the finest certified examples, outstanding pieces often achieve impressive prices. High-grade examples with exceptional eye appeal remain especially sought after because relatively few have survived in pristine condition. Whether you are just beginning your stamp collecting journey or have been collecting for many years, the 1-cent Benjamin Franklin blue stamp deserves a place in every United States stamp collection. Its rich historical significance, beautiful engraved design, and fascinating range of collectible varieties make it one of the greatest classics in American philately. Next up, the beautiful 5-cent George Washington blue stamp, one of the most recognizable classic U.S. definitive stamps ever issued. While many collectors have seen this stamp before, very few realize that certain varieties can be worth far more than their original 5-cent face value, depending on the exact issue, condition, and rarity. This small piece of American history can range from just a few dollars to several $1,000s in today's stamp market. The stamp features a finely engraved portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States and one of the most honored figures in American history. Washington has appeared on numerous U.S. postage stamps because of his role in shaping the nation. This elegant blue design became a familiar sight on letters, official documents, and business correspondence during the early 20th century. Although millions of 5-cent George Washington stamps were printed, collectors know that not all examples are the same. There are different printings, perforation measurements, paper types, watermark varieties, and shades of blue. These differences may appear very small, but they can dramatically affect the stamp's value. A collector who carefully identifies the exact variety may discover that what seems like an ordinary stamp is actually a scarce issue. Condition is one of the most important factors in determining market value. A stamp with bright original color, sharp engraving, complete perforations, and no tears, creases, stains, or repairs is always more desirable. Collectors also pay close attention to centering. A perfectly centered stamp with even margins on all four sides is much harder to find and often sells for a significant premium. Whether the stamp is mint or used also plays a major role in its value. Mint examples with original gum that have never been hinged are especially desirable. Used copies are generally more affordable, but a lightly canceled stamp with excellent centering and attractive appearance can still command impressive prices. Now let's look at the current market value in today's US dollar market. A common used 5-cent George Washington stamp in average condition typically sells for $1 to $10. Better centered used examples in very fine condition often bring $20 to $75. Mint examples with original gum usually sell between $50 and $300. Depending on the exact catalog variety and overall quality, professionally graded examples are much more valuable. Certified high-grade stamps with exceptional centering can sell for $500 to $2,500. Scarce perforation varieties, rare printings, and unusual production errors have sold for $5,000 to over $25,000 at major philatelic auctions. The rarest examples from the Washington series remain highly sought after by advanced collectors and continue to achieve strong prices whenever they appear on the market. One reason this stamp remains so popular is that it offers collectors an exciting challenge. Many issues look nearly identical, but careful examination with a perforation gauge, watermark detector, and specialized stamp catalog can reveal important differences. These small details often separate a common stamp from a rare and valuable collectible. Collectors should never attempt to clean or repair an old stamp. Even well-intentioned cleaning can permanently reduce its value. Instead, store the stamp in a quality stockbook or protective mount to preserve its condition. If you believe you have an unusual variety or an exceptionally well-preserved example, professional authentication and grading can help determine its true market value. The 5-cent George Washington stamp is more than just a collectible. It represents an important period in American postal history when handwritten letters connected families, businesses, and communities across the country. Every surviving stamp has completed a journey through history, carrying messages that are now part of America's rich postal heritage. Today, collectors around the world continue searching for premium examples of this classic stamp. Auction results consistently show that high-quality, certified specimens remain in strong demand. As collectors compete for the finest examples, outstanding stamps often realize impressive prices, making this one of the most respected issues in United States philately. Whether you are just starting your stamp collection or have years of collecting experience, the 5-cent George Washington blue stamp deserves a place in your collection. Its beautiful engraved design, fascinating history, collectible varieties, and steady collector demand make it one of the true classics of American stamp collecting. Next up, the magnificent 1898 United States $1 Trans-Mississippi Exposition stamp, commonly known by collectors as the Western Cattle in Storm stamp. This beautiful blue stamp is one of the highlights of the famous Trans-Mississippi Exposition series and has become one of the most admired engraved stamps ever produced by the United States Post Office. The Trans-Mississippi Exposition was held in Omaha, Nebraska, in 1898 to celebrate the growth and development of the American West. To commemorate this important national event, The United States issued a special series of beautifully engraved stamps featuring scenes from American history, transportation, exploration, and Western expansion. Among all the values in the set, the $1 stamp remains one of the most iconic and desirable. The design of this remarkable stamp features a dramatic Western scene with cattle and cowboys facing an approaching storm, symbolizing the rugged spirit of the American frontier. The intricate engraving showcases the incredible craftsmanship of 19th-century American stamp production. Even after more than a century, collectors continue to admire the sharp detail and artistic beauty of this masterpiece. Unlike ordinary postage stamps used for everyday mail, the $1 denomination was intended for heavy postage, international shipments, and valuable parcels. Because of its high face value in 1898, relatively few people purchased or used these stamps compared to lower denominations. As a result, surviving examples are much scarcer today, especially in excellent condition. One of the first things collectors examine is whether the stamp is mint or used. Mint examples with original gum are especially desirable because many were lost, damaged, or hinged over the past century. Used examples are also highly collectible, particularly those with light, attractive cancellations that do not obscure the beautiful engraved design. Condition plays an enormous role in determining market value. Collectors carefully inspect the centering, color, perforations, paper quality, and overall appearance. A stamp with vibrant blue color, sharp perforations, clean paper, and balanced margins can be worth several times more than an average example. Even small faults such as tears, creases, heavy cancellations, stains, or missing perforations can significantly reduce the value. Professional certification has become increasingly important in today's stamp market. Organizations such as the Philately Foundation and professional stamp experts examine rare stamps for authenticity and condition. Certified examples inspire greater confidence among collectors and often achieve much stronger prices at auction. Now let's discuss the current market value in today's US dollar market. A typical used $1 Trans-Mississippi Exposition stamp with average condition generally sells for around $200 to $700. A well-preserved used example with attractive centering can bring $800 to $2,500, depending on its quality and eye appeal. Mint examples are considerably more valuable. A mint stamp with original gum usually sells between $2,500 and $10,000, depending on freshness, centering, and gum condition. Exceptionally well centered, certified examples frequently sell for $10,000 to $40,000 at major philatelic auctions. The finest known examples have achieved extraordinary auction results. Rare, premium quality certified copies with outstanding centering and flawless preservation have sold for more than $50,000, while historically important examples with exceptional provenance have realized even higher prices in specialized stamp auctions. These impressive sales demonstrate the enduring popularity of this iconic American classic. Collectors should remember that values depend on authenticity, condition, centering, gum quality, certification, and overall market demand. Two stamps that appear similar can differ dramatically in value based on these important characteristics. Before buying or selling an expensive stamp, professional identification and certification are highly recommended. The Trans-Mississippi series remains one of the greatest achievements in United States stamp design. Its detailed engraved artwork, historical significance, and limited surviving population continue to attract collectors from around the world. Completing the full Trans-Mississippi set is considered a major accomplishment in American philately, and the $1 value is one of its centerpiece stamps. Beyond its financial value, this stamp represents an important chapter in American history. It reflects the nation's westward expansion, economic growth, and artistic excellence during the late 19th century. Every surviving example has traveled through more than 100 years of history, making it much more than a simple postage stamp. It is a genuine historical artifact treasured by museums, collectors, and investors alike. Demand for high-quality Trans-Mississippi stamps remains strong worldwide. Major stamp auctions continue to attract competitive bidding whenever premium examples become available. As fewer superb copies remain on the market, collectors are often willing to pay substantial premiums for exceptional quality and certified authenticity. Whether you are an experienced philatelist or just beginning your collecting journey, The 1898 $1 Trans-Mississippi Exposition stamp is one of the most important and beautiful stamps in United States postal history. Its extraordinary engraving, historical importance, collector demand, and impressive market value make it a true masterpiece of classic American philately. Next up, the legendary 1847 12-cent George Washington stamp. This remarkable black stamp is one of the very first official postage stamps ever issued by the United States Post Office. Because of its historical importance and rarity, it has become one of the most sought-after classics among collectors around the world. The United States issued its first official postage stamps on July 1, 1847. Before that time, mailing letters was a much more complicated process, and postage was often paid by the recipient instead of the sender. The introduction of adhesive postage stamps completely transformed the American postal system and made mailing letters simpler and more efficient. The first issue included only two stamps, the 5-cent Benjamin Franklin and the 12-cent George Washington. Together, these two stamps marked the beginning of United States philately. The 12-cent stamp features a finely engraved portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States. The elegant black design reflects the engraving skills of the 19th century and remains one of the most admired classic stamp designs ever produced. Although the design appears simple compared with modern colorful stamps, collectors appreciate its historical significance and beautiful craftsmanship compared with later U.S. stamps. Relatively few 12-cent Washington stamps were printed. Many examples were used on letters, exposed to rough handling, or simply discarded after serving their postal purpose. As a result, surviving examples in fine condition are much scarcer today than many other classic American stamps. Collectors carefully examine several important characteristics before determining the value of this stamp. The first is authenticity. Since this stamp is both rare and valuable, counterfeit examples have appeared over the years. Professional authentication is strongly recommended before buying or selling any 1847 issue. Condition is another major factor. Collectors look for clean paper, strong black color, sharp impressions, full margins, and the absence of tears, creases, repairs, or stains. Unlike many later stamps, this issue was printed without perforations, meaning collectors pay close attention to the size and quality of the margins surrounding the design. Large, even margins on all four sides greatly increase the value. Whether the stamp is unused or used also affects its market price. Genuine unused examples are exceptionally scarce because nearly all stamps were purchased for immediate postal use during the 19th century. Used copies with attractive cancellations and generous margins remain highly desirable and often command impressive auction prices. Now let's discuss the current market value in today's U.S. dollar market. A genuine used 1847 12-cent George Washington stamp with average margins and normal condition typically sells for around $700 to $2,500. Better centered examples with attractive margins and light cancellations often sell between $3,000 and $8,000. Unused examples are much rarer and considerably more valuable, depending on condition and originality. Genuine unused copies frequently sell for $10,000 to $50,000. Exceptionally well-preserved examples with outstanding margins and professional certification have realized more than $100,000 at major international stamp auctions. The finest certified examples have achieved extraordinary prices because of their rarity and historical importance. Museum-quality copies with exceptional provenance and superb preservation have sold for well over $150,000. Making this one of the crown jewels of classic United States philately. Collectors should remember that every 1847 Washington stamp is unique. Small differences in margins, cancellations, paper quality, repairs, and overall appearance can dramatically affect value. Two stamps that appear similar at first glance may differ in price by tens of thousands of dollars depending on these characteristics. Because of its high value, collectors should always handle this stamp carefully using stamp tongs rather than fingers. It should be stored in a high-quality protective mount or archival album to prevent damage. If you inherit or discover one of these stamps in an old collection, never attempt to clean or repair it. Professional expertization and certification are the safest ways to determine its authenticity and true market value. The 1847 issue represents the birth of the United States postage stamp system. Every surviving example tells the story of America's growing postal network during the 19th century. These stamps carried letters between families, businesses, government offices, and communities at a time when written correspondence was the primary form of long-distance communication. Collectors around the world continue to compete for high-quality examples whenever they appear at major auctions. Demand remains consistently strong because the stamp is not only rare but also represents the very beginning of American stamp collecting, as the number of premium examples available on the market continues to decline. Exceptional specimens remain valuable investments for serious philatelists, whether you are a beginner or an advanced collector. The 1847 12-cent George Washington stamp is one of the greatest treasures in United States postal history. Its remarkable historical significance, beautiful engraving, rarity, and impressive market value ensure that it will remain one of the most celebrated American stamps for generations to come. Thank you for watching another episode of Stamps Old World Us. I hope you enjoyed learning about the history, rarity, and current market value of the legendary 1847 12-cent George Washington stamp. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more videos featuring rare U.S. stamps, famous auction sales, hidden philatelic treasures, and updated market values in U.S. dollars. Leave a comment below and let us know which classic United States stamp you would like to see featured next. Until next time, happy collecting, and remember that some of the world's greatest treasures are no larger than a postage stamp, yet they can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Welcome everyone. Today we are taking a close look at one of the most interesting United States postage stamps ever issued, the famous 1-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this small red stamp may appear ordinary, and many people might assume it is worth only a single cent. However, the truth is much more fascinating. Depending on its printing variety, condition, rarity, and historical significance, this stamp can range in value from just a few cents to several $100s, and in extremely rare cases, even thousands of dollars. In today's video, we will explore the complete history of this classic American stamp, discover why collectors around the world are interested in it, learn what determines its market value, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's stamp collecting market. Make sure to stay until the end because some important details can completely change the value of a stamp that looks almost identical to another. The stamp you are seeing is the United States 1-cent numeral definitive stamp. Unlike portrait stamps that feature famous American leaders such as George Washington or Benjamin Franklin, this design is centered around a large decorative number 1. The design is simple yet elegant, with the words United States Postage printed around the top and the denomination shown again in the lower corners. Although millions of these stamps were produced for everyday postal use, they remain an important part of American philatelic history because they represent a period when postage stamps were designed primarily for functionality rather than elaborate artwork. The United States Postal Service issued many different 1-cent stamps throughout the 20th century because 1-cent postage played an important role in mailing newspapers, postcards, printed matter, advertising circulars, and additional postage fees. Since postal rates changed over time, the government continuously produced enormous quantities of 1-cent stamps to meet public demand. As a result, most examples found today are common, but certain varieties have become collectible because of differences in printing, perforations, paper, gum, or production methods. One of the biggest misconceptions among new collectors is that every old stamp is valuable simply because it is old. This is not true. Age alone does not determine value. Millions or even billions of stamps were printed during the early 20th century, and many still survive today. The true value of a stamp depends on several important factors including rarity, condition, printing variety, collector demand, historical significance, and authenticity. Most common 1-cent United States stamps remain inexpensive despite being over 100 years old. Looking specifically at this red 1-cent numeral stamp, collectors first examine its overall condition. They carefully inspect the centering of the printed design. If the margins surrounding the design are equal on all 4 sides, the stamp becomes much more desirable. They also examine the perforations along the edges. Missing teeth, torn corners, or damaged perforations can significantly reduce value. The color is another important factor. A bright, fresh red color is generally more attractive than a faded or heavily stained example. If the stamp has never been used and still retains its original gum on the back without any hinge marks, its market value can increase considerably. Another important characteristic is whether the stamp has been used through the mail. Used stamps usually carry cancellation marks applied by the Postal Service. Light, neat cancellations are often preferred because they allow the design to remain clearly visible. Heavy black cancellations that cover most of the stamp may reduce collector appeal. Mint stamps that have never been used are generally worth more than used examples, especially if they retain original gum and have excellent centering. Printing varieties also play a major role in determining value. During production, different printings sometimes use slightly different papers, perforation measurements, or printing equipment. To an ordinary person these differences may be invisible, but experienced philatelists use magnification, watermark detectors, perforation gauges, and specialized catalogs to identify exactly which variety they possess. In some cases, two stamps that appear almost identical can differ in value by hundreds or even thousands of dollars because one variety is much scarcer than the other. Another fascinating aspect of stamp collecting is the discovery of printing errors. Throughout postal history, small mistakes occasionally occurred during the manufacturing process. These errors include inverted designs, missing colors, double impressions, misplaced perforations, or incorrect papers. Because very few error stamps escaped into public circulation, collectors are willing to pay substantial premiums for authenticated examples. Although most 1-cent numeral stamps are common, unusual production errors can become highly desirable and command impressive auction prices. So what is the approximate market value of this particular stamp today? In average used condition, examples commonly sell for around 10 cents to $2. And used examples without original gum may bring $1 to $5. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and attractive centering can often sell for $5 to $25 or more. Scarcer printing varieties identified through specialized catalogs may reach values between $50 and several $100s. Exceptionally rare varieties or authenticated errors can be worth thousands of dollars, although these are extremely uncommon. Most ordinary examples found in family collections remain inexpensive because so many were originally produced. Many people search the internet and find listings showing similar stamps priced at thousands of dollars. It is important to understand that asking prices are not the same as actual selling prices. Anyone can list a common stamp for an unrealistic amount of money. Experienced collectors instead look at verified auction results and completed sales to determine real market value. A stamp only becomes worth what another collector is genuinely willing to pay. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone entering the hobby of stamp collecting. If you own one of these stamps, avoid cleaning it or attempting to improve its appearance. Cleaning chemicals, tape repairs, trimming the edges, or regamming the back can permanently reduce collector value. Professional collectors always prefer original condition, even if the stamp shows honest signs of age. Proper storage in archival albums or protective mounts will help preserve both its appearance and long-term collectible value. Stamp collecting remains one of the world's oldest and most rewarding hobbies because every stamp tells a story. A small piece of paper can reveal information about a country's history, economy, postal system, printing technology, and artistic design. Even when a stamp is not worth a fortune, it still represents an important historical artifact that has traveled through time, carrying messages across cities, states, and even continents. As we come to the end of today's video, we can see that this United States 1-cent numeral stamp is much more than a simple piece of postage. While the majority of examples are common and worth only a small amount, certain varieties, exceptional conditions, and rare production differences can dramatically increase their value. The key is proper identification, careful examination, and realistic expectations based on genuine market sales rather than inflated online listings. Whether your stamp is worth a few cents or several $100s, every collection begins with learning, observation, and appreciation for history. Next up, the beautiful United States 2-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this small red stamp may seem like nothing more than an ordinary piece of old paper, but collectors know that appearances can be deceiving. While millions of these stamps were printed for everyday mail, certain varieties have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing differences, and historical importance. In today's video, we will uncover the complete history of this remarkable stamp, learn why collectors continue to search for it more than a century after it was first issued, discover what factors determine its value, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's collector market. If you own one of these stamps or have found one in an old family collection, make sure to watch until the end because a few small details could make a very big difference in its value. The stamp featured here is the United States 2-cent numeral definitive stamp, recognizable by its bold and elegant number 2 displayed prominently in the center. The design is surrounded by detailed ornamental engraving, with the words United States Postage across the top and 2 cents clearly printed along the bottom. Although the design appears simple, it reflects the exceptional craftsmanship of American stamp engravers during the early 20th century. Every line, curve, and decorative element was carefully engraved to create a stamp that was not only practical for postal use but also attractive and difficult to counterfeit. During the early 1900s, the United States Postal Service relied heavily on 2-cent stamps because they matched one of the country's most common domestic letter rates. Every day, millions of letters traveled across the nation carrying personal messages, business correspondence, government documents, and postcards. Because of this enormous demand, billions of 2-cent stamps were produced over several decades. Today, these stamps remain an important reminder of a time when handwritten letters connected families, businesses, and communities long before email and smartphones existed. Many people believe that every old stamp is automatically valuable, but experienced collectors know that this is not the case. Age alone does not determine market value. Since enormous numbers of these 2-cent stamps were printed, many examples remain available today. Most surviving stamps are common and inexpensive. However, some varieties have become significantly more valuable because they were produced in smaller quantities, contain printing differences, or have survived in exceptional condition. One of the first things collectors examine is the overall condition of the stamp. Condition is one of the most important factors affecting value. A stamp with bright original color, sharp impressions, perfectly centered design, complete perforations, and no tears, stains, creases, or repairs will almost always command a higher price than a damaged example. Even small imperfections can reduce a stamp's value considerably because collectors are always searching for the finest surviving examples. Centering is especially important. If the printed design sits perfectly in the middle with equal margins on all 4 sides, collectors consider the stamp much more desirable. Poor centering, where the design is too close to one edge or partially cut off by perforations, can significantly reduce value even if the stamp is otherwise in excellent condition. The perforations along the edges also receive careful examination. These tiny holes allowed individual stamps to be separated from large printed sheets. Missing teeth, trimmed edges, short perforations, or uneven separation can reduce collector interest. Professional collectors frequently use perforation gauges to identify the exact perforation variety because different printings sometimes use different perforation measurements, and these differences may affect market value. Another major factor is whether the stamp has been used or remains mint. A used stamp has traveled through the mail and usually carries a cancellation mark applied by the Postal Service. Mint stamps have never been used and often retain their original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with undisturbed original gum generally command much higher prices than used copies, especially when they remain in pristine condition after more than 100 years. One fascinating aspect of this series is that multiple printings were produced over many years. Although 2 stamps may appear almost identical to the naked eye, specialists can identify important differences involving paper type, watermark, perforation size, printing method, ink shade, and gum characteristics. These small details often separate common stamps worth only a few dollars from scarcer varieties valued at several $100s. This is why serious collectors rely on specialized stamp catalogs and precision measuring tools when identifying their collections. Collectors also pay close attention to printing errors. Throughout postal history, occasional mistakes occurred during the printing process. Some stamps were produced with missing colors, double impressions, inverted designs, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. These production errors escaped quality control in very small numbers, making them highly desirable among advanced collectors. While most 2-cent numeral stamps are common, authenticated error varieties can become extremely valuable because of their rarity. Historical significance adds another layer of interest. These stamps were issued during a remarkable period in American history when the nation experienced rapid industrial growth, expanding railroads, increased international trade, and dramatic improvements in communication. Every stamp that survived represents a small piece of that history. Some traveled across the country carrying family news, military correspondence, financial documents, or official government business. Each surviving stamp serves as a silent witness to an era when written letters formed the backbone of daily communication. Now let us discuss the current market value. Most used examples of the 2-cent numeral stamp typically sell for approximately 25 cents to $3 depending on condition and collector demand. Common and used examples without original gum generally range from $1 to $5. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and excellent centering often sell between $10 and $50. Scarcer catalog varieties identified by watermark or perforation differences may bring prices ranging from $50 to several $100s. Truly exceptional certified examples with rare production characteristics or major printing errors can sometimes sell for $1,000 or more at specialized stamp auctions. It is important to understand that online asking prices should never be confused with actual market value. Many internet sellers list common stamps for hundreds or even thousands of dollars without ever finding a buyer. Professional collectors instead rely on completed auction sales, dealer price lists, and recognized stamp catalogs when determining realistic values. The true value of any stamp is based on verified sales between knowledgeable buyers and sellers rather than unrealistic asking prices. Authentication becomes increasingly important as the value of a stamp rises. Rare varieties are often submitted to professional philatelic experts who examine every detail under magnification. These experts verify whether the stamp is genuine, whether any repairs have been made, whether the gum is original, and whether the stamp matches the claimed catalog variety. Certified stamps generally command higher prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. If you happen to own one of these stamps, proper storage is essential. Collectors recommend handling stamps only with stamp tongs rather than fingers because natural skin oils can damage the paper over time. Stamps should be stored in acid-free albums, archival mounts, or protective sleeves away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, and insects. Proper storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginners entering the world of stamp collecting, the 2-cent numeral stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn about stamp identification. Because there are numerous varieties with subtle differences, collectors develop valuable skills by studying paper types, watermarks, perforations, gum conditions, and printing methods. Many experienced philatelists began their collections with affordable definitive stamps like this before moving on to rarer and more expensive issues. Stamp collecting continues to attract enthusiasts around the world because every stamp tells a unique story. Some represent important historical events, while others showcase artistic engraving, technological innovation, or changing postal systems. Even common stamps have educational value because they provide insight into the everyday lives of people who lived more than a century ago. Every letter carried by these stamps connected families, businesses, and communities across America during a time when written correspondence was one of society's most important forms of communication. Modern technology has also transformed the stamp market. Today, collectors can participate in online auctions, access digital stamp catalogs, compare prices from international dealers, and communicate with fellow collectors across the globe. This worldwide marketplace has made buying, selling, and identifying stamps easier than ever before, while also increasing competition for rare examples that appear at major auctions. As we reach the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 2-cent numeral stamp is much more than an old postage stamp. It is a fascinating piece of American postal history that reflects the craftsmanship, communication, and daily life of an earlier generation. Although most examples remain affordable and are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, or authenticated errors can become surprisingly valuable. The key to determining value lies in careful identification, accurate grading, proper preservation, and realistic market research. Whether your stamp is worth a few cents, a few $100s, or much more, every collection begins with curiosity, knowledge, and appreciation for history. Next up, the United States 3-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this beautiful red stamp may seem like nothing more than an ordinary piece of vintage postage, but behind its simple design lies an important chapter of American postal history. For more than a century, collectors around the world have searched for these stamps, carefully studying their different printings, varieties, and conditions. While millions of these stamps were printed for everyday mailing purposes, certain examples have become highly collectible and surprisingly valuable. In today's video, we will explore the fascinating history of the United States 3-cent numeral stamp, learn why it was issued, discover the factors that determine its market value, examine the rare varieties that collectors search for, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's stamp collecting market. Stay with us until the very end because some small details that most people never notice can dramatically increase the value of a stamp that appears completely ordinary. The stamp shown here is known as the United States 3-cents numeral definitive stamp. It features a large decorative number 3 placed in the center of the design, surrounded by beautifully engraved ornamental patterns. The words United States appear across the top, while postage due is displayed in large letters across the center, with 3 cents printed at the bottom. The simple yet elegant design reflects the outstanding engraving techniques used by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing during the early 20th century. Every tiny line was engraved with incredible precision, making these stamps both functional and visually attractive. The 3-cents numeral stamp belongs to the famous United States postage due series. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that prepaid mailing costs, postage due stamps served a very different purpose. They were used when the sender failed to pay the correct amount of postage. Instead of returning the letter, the Postal Service delivered it to the recipient, who then paid the missing postage before receiving the mail. This system helped ensure that important letters could still reach their destinations while allowing the Postal Service to recover unpaid mailing fees. Postage due stamps have always fascinated collectors because they were never sold directly to the public for ordinary mail. Instead, they were used internally by post offices as accounting tools. Because of this specialized purpose, many postage due stamps experienced heavy postal handling, making high-quality surviving examples much scarcer than ordinary definitive postage stamps. During the early 20th century, millions of business letters, invoices, legal documents, magazines, newspapers, and personal correspondence traveled through the American postal system every day. Occasionally, mistakes happened. A sender might use insufficient postage, forget additional postage for extra weight, or miscalculate postal rates. When this occurred, postal clerks applied postage due stamps to indicate the amount that needed to be collected from the recipient. These small stamps played an essential role in keeping the postal system financially balanced. One of the reasons collectors admire postage due stamps is their distinctive appearance. Unlike colorful commemorative issues featuring presidents, historical events, or national landmarks, postage due stamps used bold numerals and simple engraved designs that emphasized clarity rather than decoration. Their practical purpose gave them a unique place in American philatelic history. Now let us discuss one of the most important subjects for collectors, market value. Many people assume that every old stamp is automatically valuable simply because it has survived for over 100 years. Unfortunately, this is one of the biggest misconceptions in stamp collecting. Age alone does not determine value. Since millions of postage due stamps were printed during different periods, many examples remain relatively common today. Their actual market value depends on several important factors including rarity, condition, centering, gum quality, perforations, printing variety, collector demand, and authentication. Condition is perhaps the single most important factor affecting price. Collectors carefully inspect every part of the stamp under magnification. They examine whether the color remains bright and fresh or has faded over time. They look for tears, creases, stains, thin spots, repaired areas, missing perforations, and damaged corners. Even very small imperfections can reduce the market value significantly because advanced collectors prefer stamps in the finest possible condition. Centering also plays a major role. Ideally, the printed design should be positioned evenly within the perforated borders. Equal margins on all 4 sides indicate superior centering and usually increase value. Poorly centered examples, where the design is too close to one edge or partially cut by the perforations, generally sell for much less. Another factor collectors examine is whether the stamp is mint or used. A mint stamp has never been used for postal service and often retains its original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with full original gum and no hinge marks are considerably more valuable than heavily used examples. Used stamps carry cancellation marks applied during postal processing. Light cancellations that leave the design clearly visible are generally more desirable than heavy ink cancellations covering much of the stamp. Printing varieties make this series especially interesting. Although many stamps appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize numerous differences involving perforation measurements, watermark types, paper varieties, gum characteristics, ink shades, and printing methods. Specialized stamp catalogs identify these varieties with separate catalog numbers because some were produced in much smaller quantities than others. As a result, 2 stamps that appear nearly identical may differ in value by hundreds of dollars simply because one belongs to a much scarcer printing. Collectors also search for production errors. During the printing process, mistakes occasionally occurred. Some sheets were printed with shifted impressions, double transfers, missing colors, inverted elements, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. These accidental errors escaped quality control in very limited numbers, making them highly desirable among advanced collectors. While ordinary 3-cent postage due stamps remain relatively affordable, authenticated error varieties can command impressive prices at specialized auctions. Historical significance also contributes to collector interest. These stamps were used during an era when handwritten correspondence formed the backbone of communication throughout the United States. Businesses depended upon reliable mail delivery. Government agencies exchanged official documents through the postal system. Families living thousands of miles apart maintained close relationships through handwritten letters. Every surviving postage due stamp represents a small but important piece of this remarkable communication network. Modern collectors appreciate postage due stamps not only because of their monetary value but also because they illustrate how postal systems solved practical problems. Rather than discarding underpaid mail, the Postal Service developed an organized method to collect unpaid postage while ensuring letters still reached their intended recipients. This practical innovation demonstrates the efficiency and professionalism of the early American postal system. Now let us examine today's approximate market values. Common used examples of the United States 3-cent postage due stamp typically sell for approximately 50 cents to $3 depending on condition. Average and used examples without original gum generally range between $2 and $10. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and attractive centering frequently sell for $10 to $50. Scarcer watermark varieties or perforation varieties may reach values between $50 and several $100 depending on rarity and collector demand. Exceptionally rare certified examples, unusual printing errors, or outstanding exhibition quality specimens can sometimes exceed $1,000 at major stamp auctions. However, these high-value examples are extremely uncommon and represent only a tiny percentage of surviving stamps. One important lesson for every collector is to ignore unrealistic online asking prices. Many internet sellers list ordinary stamps for hundreds or even thousands of dollars despite having no realistic chance of selling them at those prices. Serious collectors instead study completed auction results, professional dealer inventories, and recognized philatelic catalogs when determining actual market value. A stamp is worth only what knowledgeable buyers are willing to pay in a genuine marketplace. Authentication becomes increasingly important as stamp values increase. Professional philatelic experts carefully examine valuable stamps using microscopes, ultraviolet light, watermark detectors, and other specialized equipment. They verify whether the stamp is genuine, whether any repairs or alterations have been made, whether the gum remains original, and whether the stamp matches its correct catalog variety. Certified examples generally command stronger prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. Proper storage is essential for preserving collectible value. Experienced collectors always handle stamps with special stamp tongs instead of their fingers because skin oils can damage delicate paper over time. Valuable stamps should be stored in archival quality albums or protective mounts away from direct sunlight, excessive moisture, dust, and insects. Proper preservation helps maintain both appearance and long-term market value. For beginners interested in stamp collecting, the 3-cent postage due stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn important identification skills. Studying perforations, watermarks, printing methods, gum conditions, and paper varieties helps develop the knowledge required to identify rarer and more valuable stamps in the future. Every experienced philatelist began by learning the basics before advancing to specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting continues to thrive around the world. Modern technology has made research easier than ever before. Collectors can participate in international online auctions, compare prices from dealers worldwide, access digital stamp catalogs, and communicate with fellow enthusiasts through philatelic organizations. Despite changing technology, the fascination with historic postage stamps remains as strong as ever. As we reach the conclusion of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 3-cent postage due stamp is far more than a simple piece of old paper. It represents an important part of American postal history, showcasing how the postal system managed unpaid postage while maintaining efficient mail delivery. Although most surviving examples are affordable and worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, or authenticated production errors can become highly valuable collectibles. Understanding the importance of condition, rarity, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to accurately determining any stamp's market value. Whether your stamp is worth 50 cents or several $100s, every stamp tells a fascinating story about communication, craftsmanship, and history. Next up, the United States 4-cent postage due stamp. At first glance, this stamp may look simple because of its bold numeral design and plain appearance, but for stamp collectors around the world, it represents an important chapter in the history of the United States Postal Service. Although millions of these stamps were printed for official postal use, certain examples have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing varieties, and historical significance. In today's video, we will take a complete journey through the history of the United States 4-cent postage due stamp, learn why it was created, discover what makes some examples more valuable than others, explore the different varieties collectors search for, and reveal the estimated market value of this classic stamp in today's collector market. Be sure to watch until the very end because a tiny detail that many people overlook could increase the value of this stamp by many times. The stamp shown here is the United States 4-cent postage due stamp, one of the official postage due issues produced by the United States Postal Service during the 20th century. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that customers purchased to prepay mailing costs, postage due stamps served a completely different purpose. They were used by postal employees whenever a letter or package reached the post office without sufficient postage. Instead of returning the mail to the sender, the Postal Service calculated the missing amount and collected that balance from the recipient before delivering the item. This efficient system helped ensure that mail continued moving while allowing the government to recover unpaid postage fees. One of the most noticeable features of this stamp is its bold and practical design. The large black number 4 placed in the center immediately identifies the amount of postage that needed to be collected. The surrounding red engraved frame gives the stamp a professional appearance while making it easy for postal clerks to recognize during busy working hours. Unlike commemorative stamps celebrating presidents, historical events, or national monuments, postage due stamps were designed primarily for efficiency rather than decoration. Their purpose was to communicate information quickly and accurately inside the postal system. During the early decades of the 20th century, handwritten letters remained the primary method of long-distance communication. Every day, millions of personal letters, business documents, invoices, legal papers, newspapers, magazines, and official government correspondence traveled through the American postal network. Occasionally, mistakes occurred. A sender might accidentally use the wrong postage, forget additional postage for extra weight, or miscalculate changing postal rates. Whenever this happened, postal clerks applied postage due stamps to indicate the exact amount that the recipient needed to pay before receiving the mail. These stamps therefore played an essential role in maintaining the financial stability of the Postal Service. Because postage due stamps were intended for official postal use rather than direct public purchase, they occupy a unique place in philatelic history. Many were heavily handled during postal operations, exposed to moisture, cancellation ink, folding, and transportation damage. As a result, perfectly preserved examples are much less common than many ordinary postage stamps that collectors purchased directly from post offices and carefully stored in albums. One of the most common questions people ask is whether an old stamp automatically becomes valuable simply because it has survived for many decades. The answer is no. Age alone does not determine market value. Millions of postage due stamps were produced over many years, and many examples still exist today. The true value depends upon several important factors, including rarity, condition, centering, gum quality, printing variety, collector demand, authenticity, and overall preservation. Condition is always one of the first things experienced collectors evaluate. Every part of the stamp is carefully examined under magnification. Collectors look for bright original color, sharp printing, complete perforations, clean paper, and attractive overall appearance. They also search for flaws such as tears, creases, stains, repaired areas, missing perforation teeth, fading, thinning, or heavy cancellations. Even very small defects can reduce the value considerably because advanced collectors prefer stamps that have survived in the finest possible condition. Centering is another extremely important factor. Ideally, the printed design should appear perfectly centered within the perforated border, leaving equal margins on all 4 sides. Well-centered examples are far more desirable than poorly centered copies where the design touches one side or is cut too closely by the perforations. In many cases, excellent centering alone can multiply the market value several times. Collectors also distinguish between mint and used examples. A mint stamp has never been used for postal service and usually retains its original gum on the reverse side. Mint stamps with full original gum and no hinge marks generally command the highest prices. Used examples bear cancellation marks that indicate they passed through the postal system. While many collectors appreciate the historical character of used stamps, heavily cancelled examples usually sell for less than clean mint copies. Another fascinating aspect of the 4-cent postage due stamp is the existence of multiple printing varieties. Although two stamps may appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize important differences involving watermark types, paper varieties, perforation measurements, gum characteristics, ink shades, and printing methods. Specialized stamp catalogs assign separate catalog numbers to these varieties because some were produced in much smaller quantities than others. This means that two nearly identical stamps can differ dramatically in value depending on their exact printing variety. Collectors also pay close attention to production errors. During the printing process, occasional mistakes escaped quality control. These errors include shifted impressions, double prints, missing colors, inverted elements, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. Because very few error stamps entered circulation, authenticated examples often become highly valuable collector items. Although the vast majority of 4-cent postage due stamps are common, rare production errors can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars at major stamp auctions. Historical importance adds another level of fascination. These stamps were used during a period when the United States experienced tremendous economic growth, expanding transportation systems, increasing international commerce, and rapidly improving communication networks. Every surviving stamp tells a story about how the postal system handled everyday challenges while ensuring reliable mail delivery throughout the country. Whether attached to a family letter, business invoice, legal document, or government notice, each stamp represents a small piece of American history. Modern stamp collectors appreciate postage due stamps because they document an important aspect of postal operations that many people never see. Unlike ordinary stamps that simply prepaid mailing costs, postage due stamps recorded mistakes, corrections, and financial accounting within the postal service. They provide valuable insight into how postal employees solved practical problems long before computers and automated systems existed. Now let us discuss today's estimated market value. Most used examples of the United States 4-cent postage due stamp generally sell for approximately 50 cents to $3 depending on condition. Average and used examples without original gum often range from $2 to $10. Well-preserved mint examples with full original gum, excellent centering, and fresh color frequently sell between $10 and $50. Scarcer watermark varieties, perforation varieties, or specialized catalog numbers may command prices ranging from $50 to several $100s. Certified examples with exceptional quality, unusual printing varieties, or genuine production errors can sometimes exceed $1,000 at specialized philatelic auctions. However, such high-value examples are extremely rare and represent only a very small percentage of surviving stamps. One mistake that many beginners make is believing the extremely high prices they sometimes see on online marketplaces. It is important to understand that asking prices are not the same as actual selling prices. Anyone can list a common stamp for hundreds or thousands of dollars, but that does not mean collectors are willing to pay those amounts. Professional collectors determine market value by studying completed auction sales, recognized philatelic catalogs, dealer inventories, and certified transactions. These sources provide a much more realistic picture of current market demand. Authentication becomes increasingly important as values rise. Professional philatelic experts carefully examine valuable stamps using microscopes, ultraviolet lighting, watermark detectors, perforation gauges, and other specialized equipment. They verify authenticity, identify repairs, confirm original gum, detect alterations, and determine the correct catalog variety. Certified stamps usually sell for higher prices because buyers have confidence in their authenticity and condition. Proper preservation is essential for maintaining collectible value. Experienced collectors never handle valuable stamps with bare fingers because natural skin oils may damage delicate paper over time. Instead, they use special stamp tongs designed specifically for philately. Stamps should be stored in archival quality albums, protective mounts, or acid-free stock books away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, insects, and temperature fluctuations. Good storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginning collectors, the 4-cent postage due stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn about stamp identification. Studying watermarks, perforations, paper varieties, gum types, and printing methods develops valuable knowledge that can later be applied to identifying rarer and more expensive stamps. Many experienced philatelists began their collecting journey with affordable postage due issues before expanding into specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting remains one of the world's most rewarding hobbies. Modern technology allows collectors to research stamps online, compare auction results, participate in international sales, communicate with fellow collectors, and access detailed digital catalogs from anywhere in the world. Despite technological advances, the excitement of discovering a rare variety or beautifully preserved stamp remains exactly the same as it was generations ago. As we come to the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 4-cent postage due stamp is much more than a simple piece of old paper. It represents an important part of American postal history and demonstrates how the Postal Service successfully handled underpaid mail for many decades. Although most surviving examples remain affordable and are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, certified authenticity, or unusual production errors can become highly valuable collector items. Understanding condition, rarity, centering, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to accurately determining any stamp's true market value. Whether your 4-cent postage due stamp is worth less than $1 or several $100s, it remains a fascinating historical artifact that reflects the remarkable evolution of communication in the United States. Next up, the United States 5-cent postage due stamp. At first glance, this classic red stamp may appear to be just another ordinary postage label from the past, but for collectors around the world, it represents a fascinating chapter in the history of the United States Postal Service. While millions of these stamps were printed for official postal use, certain varieties have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing characteristics, and historical significance. In today's video, we will explore the complete history of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp, discover why it was issued, learn how it was used in everyday postal operations, examine the factors that determine its market value, explore the rare varieties collectors search for, and reveal how much this historic stamp may be worth in today's collector market. Stay with us until the end because a few small details that are often overlooked can dramatically increase the value of a stamp that appears almost identical to every other example. The stamp featured here is the United States 5-cent postage due stamp, one of the official postage due issues produced by the United States Postal Service during the early 20th century. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that were purchased by customers before mailing letters, postage due stamps served an entirely different purpose. These stamps were applied by postal employees whenever mail arrived with insufficient postage. Instead of returning the letter to the sender, the post office delivered it to the recipient after collecting the missing postage. This system helped keep mail moving efficiently while ensuring that the Postal Service recovered the money it was owed. One of the most attractive features of this stamp is its elegant engraved design. A large decorative number 5 dominates the center, making the required postage amount immediately recognizable. The words United States appear across the top, while postage due curves prominently through the upper portion of the design. The denomination 5 cents is clearly printed along the bottom, framed by matching numeral 5s in each lower corner. Although simple in appearance, the fine engraving demonstrates the remarkable craftsmanship of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, whose skilled artists produced millions of beautifully detailed stamps during this period. To understand the importance of this stamp, it helps to look back at the American postal system more than 100 years ago. Before email, text messaging, and the internet, written letters were the primary method of long-distance communication. Families exchanged personal news through handwritten letters, businesses depended on the Postal Service for invoices and contracts, newspapers delivered information across the country, and government agencies relied on the mail for official correspondence. Every day, millions of pieces of mail traveled across the United States by train, horse-drawn wagons, steamships, and later by automobiles and airplanes. Despite the efficiency of the Postal Service, mistakes sometimes happened. A sender might accidentally place too few stamps on a letter, underestimate its weight, or forget that postal rates had recently changed. Rather than returning the letter and causing delays, postal clerks simply calculated the missing amount and attached a postage due stamp showing how much the recipient needed to pay before receiving the mail. This practical solution kept communication flowing while protecting postal revenue. Because postage due stamps were intended for internal postal operations instead of public sale, they occupy a unique place in stamp collecting. Most were heavily handled by postal clerks, attached to envelopes, canceled during processing, and eventually discarded after use. As a result, high-quality surviving examples are much less common than many ordinary definitive postage stamps that collectors purchase directly from post offices and carefully preserved in albums. Many people believe that any old stamp must automatically be valuable simply because it has survived for many decades. However, experienced philatelists know that this is not how stamp collecting works. Age alone does not determine market value. Since millions of 5-cent postage due stamps were printed over many years, many examples remain available today. Their value depends on a combination of rarity, condition, collector demand, printing variety, centering, originality, and authenticity. Condition is perhaps the most important factor influencing value. Professional collectors examine every part of the stamp carefully. They look for fresh original color, sharp engraving, clean paper, complete perforations, and an overall attractive appearance. They also inspect the stamp for faults such as tears, creases, stains, fading, missing perforation teeth, repaired corners, thinning, or heavy cancellations. Even a very small defect can reduce market value significantly because advanced collectors always seek the finest available examples. Centering is another critical factor. A perfectly centered stamp has equal margins surrounding the design on all four sides. Such examples are much more desirable than poorly centered stamps where the printed design touches one edge or is cut too closely by the perforations. In some cases, exceptional centering can increase the value of an otherwise common stamp by several times. Collectors also distinguish between mint and used examples. Mint stamps have never been used for mailing and usually retain their original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with full original gum and no hinge marks generally command the highest prices because they represent the stamp exactly as it left the printing press. Used examples, while historically interesting, often sell for less because they carry cancellation marks applied during postal processing. Another fascinating aspect of this series is the existence of numerous printing varieties. Although two 5-cent postage due stamps may appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize important differences involving watermark types, perforation measurements, paper varieties, gum characteristics, printing methods, and ink shades. Specialized philatelic catalogs assign separate catalog numbers to these varieties because some were printed in much smaller quantities than others. As a result, two stamps that look almost exactly alike may have dramatically different market values. Collectors are especially interested in production errors. During the printing process, occasional mistakes escaped quality control. These include inverted designs, double impressions, shifted colors, missing ink, misplaced perforations, and unusual paper varieties. Since very few error stamps entered circulation, authenticated examples often become highly valuable collector items. While the majority of 5-cent postage due stamps are common, rare error varieties have attracted strong interest at specialized stamp auctions and can sell for impressive amounts. Historical significance also adds to the appeal of this stamp. Every surviving example represents a small piece of America's communication history. These stamps were attached to letters carrying family news, business agreements, legal notices, financial records, and government correspondence. Each stamp reminds us of a time when handwritten letters connected people across thousands of miles and when the postal service played an essential role in everyday life. Modern collectors appreciate postage due stamps because they tell a different story from ordinary postage stamps. Instead of celebrating famous people or important historical events, these stamps reveal the practical side of running one of the world's largest postal systems. They demonstrate how postal employees solve problems quickly and efficiently while maintaining reliable mail service throughout the nation. Now let us discuss today's estimated market value. Most used examples of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp typically sell for approximately 50 cents to $5 depending on their condition. Average and used examples without original gum generally range between $2 and $10. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum, excellent centering, and bright color frequently sell between $15 and $75. Scarcer watermark varieties, perforation varieties, or specialized catalog numbers may command prices ranging from $100 to several $100s. Exceptionally rare certified examples with outstanding condition, unusual printing varieties, or major production errors can sometimes exceed $1,000 at major philatelic auctions. However, such examples are extremely rare and represent only a tiny percentage of surviving stamps. One important lesson for collectors is to ignore unrealistic asking prices sometimes seen on online marketplaces. It is common to find ordinary stamps listed for hundreds or even thousands of dollars by inexperienced sellers. However, asking prices do not represent actual market value. Professional collectors determine value by studying completed auction sales, recognized stamp catalogs, dealer price lists, and certified transactions. These sources provide a far more accurate picture of what collectors are genuinely willing to pay. Authentication becomes increasingly important as values increase. Professional philatelic experts examine valuable stamps using microscopes, perforation gauges, watermark detectors, ultraviolet lighting, and other specialized equipment. They verify authenticity, identify repairs, confirm original gum, detect alterations, and determine the correct catalog variety. Certified examples usually bring stronger prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. Proper preservation is essential for protecting collectible value. Experienced collectors always handle stamps with special stamp tongs rather than bare fingers because natural skin oils can damage delicate paper over time. Stamps should be stored in archival quality albums, acid-free stock books, or protective mounts away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, insects, and extreme temperatures. Proper storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginners entering the hobby, the 5-cent postage due stamp provides an excellent opportunity to learn the fundamentals of stamp identification. Studying watermarks, perforations, paper varieties, printing methods, gum conditions, and engraving techniques helps develop the skills needed to identify more valuable stamps in the future. Many experienced philatelists began their collecting journey with affordable postage due issues before expanding into highly specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting remains one of the world's most rewarding hobbies. Thanks to modern technology, collectors can research stamps online, compare auction results, access digital catalogs, join philatelic societies, communicate with experts, and participate in international auctions from anywhere in the world. Yet despite these technological advances, the excitement of discovering a rare variety or beautifully preserved stamp remains exactly the same as it was generations ago. As we come to the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 5-cent postage due stamp is far more than an ordinary piece of old paper. It represents an important chapter in American postal history and demonstrates how the Postal Service successfully managed underpaid mail during a time when written correspondence connected millions of people every day. While most surviving examples are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, certified authenticity, or genuine production errors can become highly valuable collectibles. Understanding rarity, condition, centering, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to determining a stamp's true market value. Whether your 5-cent postage due stamp is worth less than $1 or several $100s, it remains a remarkable historical artifact that preserves the story of America's postal system for future generations. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this detailed guide has helped you better understand the history, identification, rarity, and current market value of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp in today's global stamp collecting market.
Welcome to today's fascinating journey into one of the most recognizable classic postage stamps ever issued in the United States. If you enjoy discovering the history, rarity, and real market value of collectible stamps, then you're in the right place. Today we are taking a close look at the famous United States 1-cent Benjamin Franklin green postage stamp. This small green stamp may look ordinary at first glance, but some examples have become highly collectible and can sell for impressive amounts of money depending on their printing variety, condition, centering, gum, perforations, cancellation, and certification. By the end of this video, you'll know what makes this stamp valuable, how collectors determine its worth, and how much it can sell for in today's stamp market. The United States 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp is one of the most iconic postage stamps ever produced. Benjamin Franklin was one of the founding fathers of the United States and also served as the nation's first postmaster general. Because of his important role in the history of the American postal system, Franklin appeared on countless United States stamps over many decades. The green 1-cent Franklin stamp became one of the most widely used definitive stamps in American postal history, with millions and millions printed for everyday mail. Although enormous numbers were produced, not every Franklin stamp is identical. Different printings were issued over many years, using different printing methods, different papers, different watermarks, different perforation measurements, and sometimes different shades of green. These small differences are extremely important to stamp collectors because they determine exactly which Scott catalog number a stamp belongs to. Two stamps that appear almost identical to the naked eye can have dramatically different market values after careful examination. One of the first things collectors examine is the condition of the stamp. Condition is one of the biggest factors affecting value. A stamp with bright original color, clean paper, full perforations, and no tears, creases, thin spots, or stains is always more desirable than a damaged example. If the stamp has never been hinged and still has its original gum on the back, collectors generally pay a premium compared with stamps that have been previously mounted or heavily hinged. Centering is another extremely important factor. Centering refers to how evenly the printed design sits within the perforated borders. Perfectly centered, Franklin stamps are much scarcer than poorly centered examples because early printing technology often produced uneven margins. Collectors are willing to pay significantly more for stamps that display wide, balanced margins on all four sides. The cancellation also affects value. Many 1-cent Franklin stamps were used on everyday letters and therefore have heavy black postmarks across the face. A light, neat cancellation that does not obscure Benjamin Franklin's portrait is usually preferred. Some collectors specialize in unusual cancellations. Fancy cancels, railroad cancels, or town postmarks, which can themselves become valuable collecting specialties. Experts also carefully measure the perforations around the edges of the stamp. Tiny differences in perforation gauge can identify completely different stamp issues. Watermarks hidden within the paper can also separate common varieties from much scarcer ones. Professional collectors often use special watermark fluid and precision perforation gauges to identify these details accurately. Another important factor is the printing method. Early Franklin stamps were produced using flat plate printing, while later issues were printed using rotary presses. Rotary press stamps are slightly different in size because the printing plates were curved around cylinders before printing. This small difference is almost impossible to notice without measurement, but it can completely change the catalog identification and the market value. Collectors also examine the paper itself. Some Franklin stamps were printed on bluish paper, while others appeared on different paper types. Certain paper varieties are much scarcer than ordinary printings. Color shades may also vary from light green to deep green depending on the printing period and ink formulation. Now let's talk about today's market value. Most common used United States 1-cent Benjamin Franklin green stamps that have average centering, ordinary cancellation, and normal wear generally sell for around $1 to $10 in today's collector market. Better preserved examples with attractive appearance often sell for $10 to $50 depending on quality. Very fine examples, with excellent centering and minimal, flaws may bring between $50 and $200, especially if they are identified as a more desirable printing variety. Mint examples with original gum are usually worth considerably more than used copies, particularly when professionally graded. Exceptional. Mint examples with superb centering and high grading from professional stamp grading companies can sell for several $100s or even several $1,000s. Certified examples with outstanding eye appeal regularly attract strong bidding from advanced collectors during major stamp auctions. Rare printing varieties are in an entirely different category. Certain Franklin stamps with unusual perforations, scarce watermarks, experimental printings, or production errors have sold for thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. These exceptional examples are extremely rare and represent only a tiny fraction of all Franklin stamps that were printed. If you discover a Benjamin Franklin 1-cent stamp in an old family collection, do not immediately assume it is either worthless or extremely valuable. Instead, examine it carefully under good lighting. Look for sharp perforations, clean paper, attractive centering, bright original color, and whether the stamp has been used or remains mint. Never attempt to clean or repair an old stamp, because even gentle cleaning can significantly reduce its value. Professional authentication is highly recommended for stamps that appear unusual or potentially valuable. Expertising organizations can identify the exact catalog number, confirm authenticity, detect repairs, and issue certificates that greatly increase buyer confidence. Certified rare stamps usually command much higher prices than uncertified examples. Storage is equally important for preserving value. Collectors keep valuable stamps in acid-free albums, protective stock books, or archival quality mounts. Stamps should be protected from moisture, sunlight, dust, excessive heat, and fingerprints. Proper storage helps preserve color, paper quality, and gum condition for future generations. The popularity of Benjamin Franklin stamps has remained strong for decades because they combine American history with classic stamp design. Their affordability allows beginners to start collecting, while the numerous rare varieties provide exciting challenges for advanced philatelists. This combination keeps demand healthy across all levels of the stamp collecting community. Online marketplaces, specialized stamp dealers, public auctions, and philatelic exhibitions continue to trade Franklin stamps every year. Market prices fluctuate depending on rarity, demand, grading, certification, and overall economic conditions. While common examples remain affordable, premium quality and certified rare varieties continue to achieve impressive auction results. The stamp shown here represents one of the classic symbols of American philately. Although many examples are common because millions were printed, every Franklin stamp deserves careful examination before assigning a value. Small details that are invisible to casual observers can mean the difference between a $1 stamp and one worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Next up, the beautiful blue United States 1 cent Benjamin Franklin postage stamp. At first glance, this stamp may appear to be just another old 1-cent stamp, but collectors around the world know that certain varieties of this issue can be surprisingly valuable. Some examples sell for only a few dollars, while others have reached hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands of dollars depending on their rarity, condition, printing variety, and certification. In this video, we will uncover the history behind this famous stamp, explain what makes it valuable, discuss the factors that determine its market price, and reveal what collectors are paying for it in today's stamp market. The United States 1 cent Benjamin Franklin stamp is one of the most recognizable postage stamps in American philatelic history. Benjamin Franklin was not only one of the founding fathers of the United States, but also served as the country's very first Postmaster General. His contributions to the American postal system made him one of the most frequently featured figures on United States postage stamps. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, millions of Franklin stamps were printed to meet the growing demand for everyday mail. Although this blue 1 cent Franklin stamp looks simple, identifying its exact issue is not always easy. Over many years, the United States Post Office produced numerous Franklin stamps using different printing methods, different papers, different perforation measurements, different watermarks, and different shades of blue. These small differences may seem insignificant, but they are extremely important to collectors because they determine the stamp's catalog number and market value. The very first thing experienced collectors examine is the overall condition of the stamp. Condition plays the biggest role in determining value. A stamp with fresh color, sharp design details, complete perforations, and no tears, creases, stains, thins, or repairs is always worth more than a damaged example. Even a tiny crease or missing perforation can reduce the value significantly. Centering is another major factor. Collectors prefer stamps where the portrait of Benjamin Franklin is perfectly centered between all 4 perforated edges. Early printing equipment often produced uneven margins, making perfectly centered examples much scarcer. Because of this, collectors pay premium prices for beautifully centered stamps with balanced borders. Next comes the cancellation. Since most 1 cent Franklin stamps were used on ordinary mail, many have heavy black postmarks covering the portrait. A light, clean cancellation that leaves Franklin's face clearly visible is much more desirable. Some collectors even specialize in rare town cancels, railway mail cancellations, and fancy geometric postmarks, which can increase the value beyond the stamp itself. The perforations surrounding the stamp are also carefully measured. Different perforation gauges identify different printings. 2 stamps may appear identical to beginners, yet a slight variation in perforation size can mean the difference between a common stamp and a scarce collectible worth many times more. Watermarks hidden inside the paper provide another clue. Some Franklin issues were printed on watermarked paper, while later printings were not. Detecting these watermarks often requires special watermark fluid and expert knowledge. Collectors also examine the paper texture, thickness, and printing quality before assigning a value. Printing method is equally important. Early Franklin stamps were printed using flat plate presses, while later versions were produced using rotary presses. Rotary press stamps are slightly larger because the printing plate curved around a cylinder during production. This tiny size difference may be difficult to notice without precise measurement, but it can completely change the identification and value of the stamp. Color also matters. While many examples appear deep blue, others may show lighter blue, gray blue, or dark ultramarine shades depending on the printing period and ink mixture. Collectors often compare colors under proper lighting to determine the correct variety. Now, let's discuss the current market value. Most common used blue, 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamps in average condition usually sell between $1 and $15 in today's collector market. These are the stamps most commonly found in old family albums, inherited collections, or mixed stamp lots. Examples with better centering. Stronger color, lighter cancellations, and fewer flaws often sell between $15 and $75. These stamps are more attractive to collectors and usually command stronger prices during auctions and dealer sales. Mint. Examples that still retain their original gum on the reverse side are generally worth much more. Depending on the exact variety and condition, mint stamps commonly sell between $50 and $500, with exceptionally well-preserved examples bringing even higher prices. Professional grading can dramatically increase value. A certified stamp graded extremely fine or superb by a respected grading service may sell for hundreds or several $1,000s, especially when demand is high among collectors seeking top-quality examples. Certain rare varieties of the blue 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp are among the most valuable classic United States stamps. Stamps with unusual perforations, scarce paper types, printing errors, inverted watermarks, rare shades, or experimental printings have sold for several $1,000s, while the finest certified examples of the rarest varieties have achieved tens of thousands of dollars at major philatelic auctions. If you own one of these stamps, avoid cleaning it or attempting to improve its appearance. Cleaning, repairing, regumming, or trimming perforations can permanently reduce both collector interest and market value. Experienced collectors prefer completely original stamps, even if they show honest signs of age and postal use. Proper storage is essential for preserving value. Keep valuable stamps in archival quality albums, stock books, or protective mounts. Avoid direct sunlight, humidity, excessive heat, and fingerprints. Using stamp tongs instead of fingers helps prevent accidental damage to the delicate paper and perforations. Collectors should also compare their stamps with specialized stamp catalogs. These catalogs list hundreds of Franklin varieties and explain the identifying features of each issue. Because many Franklin stamps look nearly identical, accurate identification often requires careful measurement, magnification, and expert examination. Professional certificates of authenticity provide additional confidence for buyers and sellers. If you believe your stamp may be an unusual variety or appears to be in exceptional condition, obtaining an expert certificate can significantly increase its selling potential and reassure collectors that the stamp is genuine. The Benjamin Franklin 1-cent blue stamp continues to be one of the most collected United States stamps because it combines rich American history with fascinating printing varieties. Beginners appreciate its affordability, while advanced collectors enjoy searching for the rare varieties hidden among common examples. This wide appeal has kept Franklin stamps popular for generations. Every year, collectors buy and sell these stamps through stamp auctions, professional dealers, online marketplaces, and philatelic exhibitions. While common examples remain inexpensive, premium quality certified specimens continue to attract competitive bidding from collectors around the world. Market values change over time based on rarity, condition, collector demand, and the availability of outstanding examples. The most important lesson is that no Benjamin Franklin stamp should ever be judged by appearance alone. Two stamps that seem identical may have completely different values because of subtle differences in perforation, watermark, paper, printing method, or centering. Careful examination can reveal whether a stamp is an ordinary collectible worth only a few dollars or an exceptional rarity worth hundreds or even thousands.
Welcome to today's exciting exploration into one of the most famous classic United States postage stamps ever issued. Today we are taking a close look at the beautiful green United States 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp from the celebrated 1908 issue. At first glance, this historic stamp may seem like an ordinary old 1-cent stamp, but collectors know that certain examples can be worth far more than their face value. Depending on the printing variety, condition, centering, gum, perforations, cancellation, and professional certification, this stamp can range in value from just a few dollars to several $1,000s. In this video, we'll uncover the fascinating history behind this stamp, explain why collectors admire it, discuss the factors that determine its value, and reveal what examples are selling for in today's stamp market. The 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp was issued by the United States Post Office as part of the famous Washington Franklin series, one of the largest and most complicated stamp series ever produced in American postal history. This series was introduced in 1908 and continued through the early 1920s. Instead of featuring many different historical figures, the series focused primarily on George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. Because Benjamin Franklin served as America's very first Postmaster General, it was only fitting that he appeared on the nation's lowest denomination stamp, the 1-cent issue that handled enormous volumes of everyday mail. The design of this stamp is admired for its elegant engraving. At the center is a finely detailed portrait of Benjamin Franklin surrounded by an ornate decorative frame. The words, United States of America, appear across the top, while Postage 1 cent is displayed prominently at the bottom. The rich green color became one of the defining features of this classic issue and remains instantly recognizable to collectors around the world. Although millions of these stamps were printed, they are far from identical. During more than a decade of production, the United States Bureau of Engraving and Printing introduced numerous changes in paper, ink, perforations, watermarks, and printing methods. These differences created dozens of collectible varieties that often appear almost identical to beginners but are easily distinguished by experienced philatelists. One of the first factors collectors examine is the stamp's condition. Condition has the greatest influence on market value. A stamp with bright original color, crisp engraved details, complete perforations, and no tears, creases, stains, thins, or repairs will always be worth more than an example showing damage or heavy wear. Even a small flaw can reduce value significantly. Centering is another extremely important characteristic. Many Washington Franklin stamps were printed with uneven margins because of the printing technology available at the time. When Benjamin Franklin's portrait is perfectly centered between the perforated edges, collectors consider the stamp much more desirable. Superb centering can multiply the value several times over compared to an off-center copy. Collectors also carefully inspect the perforations around the stamp. Different perforation gauges identify different printings within the Washington Franklin series. A slight variation in the spacing of the perforations can change the catalog number and dramatically affect the stamp's value. Professional collectors often use specialized perforation gauges to identify these differences accurately. The paper itself also plays a major role. Early printings of this series used double-line watermarked paper, while later issues were printed on unwatermarked paper. Detecting these watermarks requires special equipment or watermark fluid, and the presence or absence of a watermark helps determine the exact variety. Printing methods are equally important. Some 1-cent Franklin stamps were produced using flat plate printing, while others came from rotary presses. Rotary press stamps are slightly larger because the printing plates wrapped around large cylinders. This tiny size difference may seem insignificant, but it is one of the key details experts use when identifying valuable varieties. The cancellation also affects value. Since these stamps were primarily used for ordinary mail, many examples have heavy black postmarks covering the design. Collectors generally prefer lightly cancelled stamps where Franklin's portrait remains clearly visible. Attractive town cancels, railway mail cancels, or unusual postmarks may also increase collector interest. Now let's discuss today's market value. Most common used 1-cent Benjamin Franklin Washington Franklin stamps in average circulated condition usually sell for $1 to $10 in today's collector market. These are the examples most commonly found in inherited stamp albums, estate collections, and dealer stock books. Examples with stronger color, better centering, lighter cancellations, and fewer flaws often sell between $10 and $50. These stamps appeal to collectors seeking higher quality examples for their albums. Very fine and extremely fine used examples identified as scarcer varieties may sell between $50 and $200, particularly when professionally identified and accurately catalogued. Mint examples with original gum generally command much higher prices. Depending on the exact Scott catalog number, paper type, perforation, watermark, and condition, mint stamps often sell between $100 and $1,000. Exceptional mint examples with pristine original gum are always in strong demand among collectors. Professionally graded examples receiving high numerical grades from respected grading companies frequently achieve premium prices. Superb centering, flawless perforations, brilliant color, and outstanding eye appeal can increase values dramatically. Some certified examples have sold for several $1,000s at major philatelic auctions. Rare varieties within the Washington, Franklin series are among the most valuable classic United States stamps ever produced. Certain experimental printings, rare perforation combinations, unusual watermarks, coil issues, imperfect varieties, and production errors have sold for tens of thousands of dollars, with the rarest examples bringing even higher prices when offered at prestigious international auctions. If you discover one of these Franklin stamps in an old collection, do not clean it or attempt to improve its appearance. Cleaning can permanently remove original characteristics that collectors value and may significantly reduce its market price. Originality is always preferred over artificial improvements. Proper storage is essential for preserving value. Valuable stamps should be kept in archival quality albums, stock books, or protective mounts. Avoid moisture, direct sunlight, excessive heat, dust, and handling with bare fingers. Stamp tongs are the safest way to handle collectible stamps without causing damage. Accurate identification is extremely important because many Washington, Franklin stamps appear nearly identical. Collectors often compare measurements, perforations, watermarks, printing methods, and design details using specialized reference catalogs and magnification. Professional authentication is highly recommended for any stamp that appears unusual or exceptionally well preserved. Collectors around the world continue to search for high-quality examples of the Washington, Franklin series because it offers one of the greatest challenges in American philately. With dozens of major varieties and hundreds of minor differences, the series provides endless opportunities for both beginning collectors and advanced specialists. The demand for these classic stamps remains strong through stamp dealers, online marketplaces, collector exhibitions, and international auctions. Market values continue to reflect rarity, condition, collector demand, certification, and overall eye appeal. While common examples remain affordable, outstanding certified examples continue to attract competitive bidding from serious collectors worldwide. The green 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp from the Washington, Franklin series is much more than a simple postage stamp. It represents an important chapter in American postal history, showcasing remarkable engraving craftsmanship and honoring one of the nation's greatest historical figures. Every example tells a story of communication, history, and craftsmanship. Whether your stamp is worth just a few dollars or turns out to be a rare variety valued in the thousands, it remains an enduring piece of philatelic history that continues to fascinate collectors more than a century after it was first issued.